Hello everyone, and welcome to the next flip of academic writing. This flip is about producing an outline. This is a very important step in the paper writing process. In fact, if you have not completed your outline, you should not be writing any sentences or paragraphs of your paper yet. So let's look at how to make the outline and how to use it to focus your writing, and not only your writing, but how to focus your research so that you don't waste time. First, we're going to review from the last flip about turning your thesis statement into an argument, and then we'll go into how to make your outline of your argument and how to use your outline. So in the paper writing process, we are finally to step 5, outlining. So maybe you feel like by now we should be writing something, but actually it's not time to write any sentences or paragraphs yet. You have written your one sentence, your thesis statement. Hopefully, you have followed all of the rules for thesis statements, so it is strong in active voice, and it is something that must and can be argued. Hopefully, you've followed all of the rules. If so, writing your outline should not be very difficult. But until your outline is ready, you should not be starting to write any content of your paper. The outline will be your guide. It will be your map for writing your paper. So the outline must be done before we start writing any of the content. From previous flips, you know that the thesis statement is the ultimate conclusion of your academic paper. We need to write that first because it is the key, it is the cornerstone, the foundation for your entire paper. But very closely related to that is the outline. The outline is your map, the sort of structure of your paper that will show all of the premises that go to your ultimate conclusion. So although we write the thesis statement first, we need to make the argument. It's a little bit backwards from when we looked at logical arguments in a previous flip, but the skills are exactly the same. Just the structure in the outline will be inverted. So our goal was to make an argument in the previous flip. In the argument, each of the main points, your claims, should be answering, rebutting an objection, a possible weakness, or possible problem with your thesis statement. Things to consider and keep in mind are defining terms, the form, and truth. So let's look at a few examples. You saw this example in the paper writing process flip from the beginning of this semester. So here's an example of a thesis statement. The dry sense of British humor exists to compensate for their reputation for bland food. So the next thing after your thesis statement has followed all of the rules is to consider the possible weaknesses. Make a list of any possible weakness that you can think of, any objection, any opposite opinion that your reader might have. So for this question, we have identified a number of potential weaknesses, such as, well, is British food actually bland? Maybe it's not. If it is bland, was it always bland? Maybe in the past it wasn't, but it became bland after a certain period of time. Or maybe it used to be bland, but it's not anymore. Does British food actually have a reputation of being bland? Who thinks so? Who claims that? Maybe it's just a misperception. And how many people actually think that? Is a dry sense of humor different from other types of humor? Is British humor actually dry? Maybe it's not. Maybe there's more than one kind of British humor. Are there any other common explanations for British humor? Maybe food is not the best one. Maybe there are other possible reasons that their humor is dry. Even if British humor is dry, and even if British food is bland, is there any evidence of a connection between these things? So these are some examples of weaknesses, objections, questions your reader might have when your reader is doubting the claim of your thesis statement. So just as you can see in these examples, you can use the same kind of questions to think of your own weaknesses to your own thesis statement. So here, if we gray out the specifics of the British humor example, in the same way, you can insert your own thesis statement and use these kind of questions as some of the possible objections. So your claim, is it actually what you said? Was it always that way? Did it become that way at some point? If there's a reputation about the thing that you are writing about, who thinks so? Why do they think so? Is what you said actually different from other things? Are there any other explanations, any other solutions than the one that you are suggesting? Is there any evidence? This is, of course, an important one. Is there evidence to prove, to support your thesis statement's claims? So these are some examples that you can use. But you may think of different weaknesses and objections that are specific to your case. So let's look at some more examples. So we've been looking at this example of a thesis statement. Teachers in Hokkaido should use ICT to provide remote classroom instruction in order to increase the education level of remote schools and connect large schools to small schools. So this is a sample thesis statement. Before writing anything, in order to make the outline, it's necessary to make a list of possible weaknesses, possible questions or objections the reader might have. So here are some examples. What is ICT? What kind of ICT are we talking about in this paper? So this is an example of defining the terms, defining your terms. Why should any teachers use ICT anywhere? Why should teachers in Hokkaido specifically use ICT? Do Hokkaido teachers already use ICT? Maybe they already do it. In that case, this would not be a unique thesis statement. How far away counts as remote? If we're going to talk about remote schools, well, remote from where? How far is remote? Are remote schools actually small? Do they actually need to increase their education level? Maybe their level is already good enough. Or maybe their level is not good enough, but why does it matter if they don't increase and stay at the low level where they are now? Is there any evidence that would show, that would prove or support that if you connect a large school to a small school, that it will increase the level of the remote school's level of education? Is there any different type of solution? Maybe a solution that is easier or less expensive, cheaper than using ICT. So these are some possible objections, some possible opposite opinions that a reader might have about this thesis statement. Before starting to write even one sentence of the paper, it's important to make a list of these kind of weaknesses. Let's look at another example from our sample thesis statement. Tuna is an endangered species due to overfishing. So, institutions that manage marine resources in maritime countries should sign a treaty which imposes limits that prevent overfishing. So this is a great thesis statement, but we need to think about any potential weaknesses, objections that readers might have. So we can see some examples here. First, is tuna actually endangered? Is it endangered because of overfishing, or maybe there's a different reason that it's endangered? Maybe it's endangered for multiple reasons. Is tuna actually overfished? Maybe it's not. Why does it matter if tuna is endangered or if tuna goes extinct? If there's no more tuna in the world, what problems will happen? Will it actually cause any problems? If tuna is actually overfished, well, is there a different kind of fish that we can catch and eat instead, so tuna does not have a large impact? Which institutions actually manage the marine resources? Is it true that maritime countries have these kind of institutions? If so, which countries have them? Which countries don't have them? Should the institution sign a treaty? Who thinks so? Who has written about this? Who has talked about this? Why do they think a treaty would be useful? Why do these institutions have the right to make a treaty? Why do they have the right to enforce a treaty if they make one? Realistically, how can these institutions that are located in different countries around the globe, how realistically can they coordinate in order to write this treaty? Even if they write the treaty, can they enforce it? So these are some objections that the readers might have. So take a moment, think about any possible weaknesses, any possible questions or objections that readers might have to the claims of your thesis statement, and make a list. Those weaknesses are going to be used for your outline. So let's go back to our example about British humor, and let's look in more detail about how to turn the weaknesses into an outline. So here are some weaknesses that we found. Is British food actually bland? Are there any common explanations besides food for British humor's dry style? And even if British humor is dry, even if British food is bland, is there any evidence of a connection? So in order to address these objections, address means to answer, to rebut, to give your solution to this question, to help put at rest, put at ease the person who had this question. You want to convince them of your answer to that question. Your answers to the weaknesses are the claims of your outline. So here's an example of addressing the main weaknesses. The dry sense of British humor exists to compensate for their reputation for bland food. That's the thesis statement. So first means we're going to answer the weakness. Is British food actually bland? So first we give the answer to that. British food is actually bland. And second, we're going to address the second question, the second weakness. Second, the style of British humor cannot be blamed on the weather. And third, is there any evidence of this connection? Third, we're going to give our answer to that, which is several experts of British culture have commented, have connected some jokes from British humor to British palate, the British diet or British tastes, British cooking. So first we identify the main weaknesses, and then we answer those weaknesses. Those answers are our claims. So when we make that sort of short argument, our first, second, third, answering the questions, the weaknesses, it's great. This is a great start, but we haven't actually written the paper yet. We haven't actually proven any of those claims yet. So the outline is going to help us to prove those claims. We need to convert our argument to a structured outline. So let's take a moment and discuss why outline. This might be a step that you enjoy, or it might be a step that you don't enjoy. You might want to hurry and start writing, but actually it's important to stop and make the outline very strong before you start writing the content of your paper. So let me tell you why. First of all, our goal is to convert our argument into an outline because writing an academic paper takes lots of time. It takes lots of research, but we don't want to spend so much time and do so much research that we cannot write a good paper. We all have limited time, limited energy in this life. Maybe you have a deadline, end of the semester, or you're submitting for some kind of deadline that you have to protect. You don't have time to read everything. You don't have time to write lots of content that you're not going to use. So we need to divide writing the academic paper into small steps that we can actually do. We need to make it doable. We need to focus only on the research that will be useful to prove the thesis statement. Anything else you research that cannot prove your thesis statement is not useful. for your academic paper. You might find some interesting things, some interesting facts, but if it cannot prove your thesis statement, it's not useful for your paper. You can always read it sometime later if you want to go back to that book or that website after your deadline. But before your deadline is not the time to read all of those things. We want to focus. What do you need? We want to write only the sentences that you're going to actually use to prove your argument. We don't want to write a lot of extra sentences that are useless. So we want to avoid wasting time reading things that you cannot use to prove your thesis statement. And we especially want to avoid writing lots of sentences, paragraphs that you cannot use to prove your thesis statement. I have seen many Japanese people and others write many words, paragraphs of content, giving background or side information about their topic. But remember, the topic is the broadest. From the topic, we narrow to the themes, and then we narrow to the thesis statement. We are not writing about that topic. We're writing about your proofs, your evidence for the thesis statement. If you start writing about other things that are in the topic, but not about your thesis statement, all of that is off topic. Off topic means it is not on topic. It is not pertinent. It is not relevant for your argument. Your paper is the argument, the reasons that your thesis statement is correct. You're trying to convince the reader of your thesis statement, so you should not be distracting them or bogging them down with reading lots of things that are not part of your argument. So we need to avoid wasting words, wasting sentences, wasting paragraphs of writing that you cannot use. In fact, you would need to delete it. You would need to cut it, snip it, remove it from your paper if you write all of those sentences, paragraphs that are not on topic. We want to avoid off topic, only write on topic. How do we know what is on topic versus what is off topic? The outline will show us. The outline is our guide. It's our map of what is on topic, and anything that's not in the outline is off topic. We're not going to write any sentences about that. If you write it, you just have to delete it later. We are only going to write and use the sentences that are in the outline. So as an example, I did a survey when I first came to Japan, and I asked many university students who are Japanese about their experience with Western academic writing. I asked them what was most surprising to them about writing in English, academic writing, and 37.5% of them said the structure. In other words, the outline of the paper. They were surprised. They were not prepared to write a paper using the correct structure. That is what the outline will help you do. So let's look at their perspectives. So these are some quotes from the students who didn't know how to outline and didn't know how to use the structure correctly. So they had a difficult experience. They said, "I'm surprised that the form of it is established." That's correct. Western academic writing has a structure. That is following the outline. You need to follow the correct form for your paper to be good. One student said, "It has some rules to write paragraphs." That is correct. Every paragraph needs its own claim. That's a conclusion of the premises. Another student said, "I think English academic writing has rules. So if I could understand the rule, it'd be easier to write, but it's hard to learn all." So I agree. It's important to learn step by step the rules. Right now, we're in the outlining step. Another student said, "Paragraph writing concerns about organization seriously." This is correct. The organization, the structure, the outline is very serious in Western academic writing. If you fail at the thesis statement and the outline, the paper is not going to get a good grade, or it is not going to be well received. It is not going to be published. You need to follow this structure. Another student said there's a strict rule about structure. So that is what we're doing today. We're making the outline so your structure will be correct. Let me give you an example. So this is from a student. She wrote all of these words for her paper in English. However, here I have grayed out all of the words that were not useful. All of those words are off topic. She spent a lot of time to read and she spent a lot of time to write them, but actually they did not prove her thesis statement, so that means they're off topic. Only the parts you see here that are in black were related to her thesis statement. So you can see all these words she spent time writing. That's a lot of effort and a lot of time. But actually she didn't need to write all of that. She had to just delete it if she wants to get a good grade on Western academic writing. Actually, if you make your structure, if you make your outline, you will avoid spending so much time to write words that you cannot use. That's what we want to do. So let's look at the outline of a Western academic writing paper. This is how it must be. We have a strict and serious structure. This is it. So we have our introduction, claim 1, claim 2, claim 3, and conclusion. This is our basic structure. So please remember this warning from our first flip that when we use the words introduction and conclusion, the meaning is not the same as in Japanese academic writing. What you can put into the introduction and what you can put into the conclusion are specific in Western academic writing. You cannot write the same things that you might want to write in a Japanese introduction or conclusion. So please be careful about it. So in our introduction, I've made it larger here in the gray box. So introduction is your thesis statement and a short summary of your argument. So that's your claim 1 plus claim 2 plus claim 3. Very brief, just in 1 to maybe 3 sentences. And optional, so not necessary, but if you feel that you need to give a little bit of background information, or if you want to say why you decided to write this paper, you can make 1 paragraph about that at the bottom of your introduction. But a main important part of your introduction is your thesis statement and brief summary of your argument, claim 1, 2, and 3. So that all goes into the introduction. Then, if you feel you need or want 1 more paragraph where you write about why you chose this topic or any kind of background knowledge that you think the reader should know, that will all just go into the 2nd paragraph. Keep it very brief. Don't spend a lot of words, a lot of time, a lot of paragraphs to write background information. We don't do that in Western academic writing. You might be used to that, or you might want to do that, but we don't do that. It's not part of our structure. We assume that the reader is intelligent and well-educated. They don't need a lot of background information. Only if there's something you really think very specific, very pertinent, very relevant to your paper, to your thesis statement, and maybe the average person doesn't know it, then you can put that into your 2nd part, the optional paragraph of your introduction. But unless it's something like that, you don't need to give background information. If you really feel you need it, you can put it in there, but keep it very brief, only 1 paragraph. That means maybe 3 to 4 to 5 sentences at most. You shouldn't spend more than that to give any background information. That's not an important part of a Western academic writing. The important part, your thesis statement and a brief summary of your claims. That's what needs to be in your introduction. So, the introduction is the short summary of your argument in present or future tense. So you'll say something like, in this paper, I argue that, or in this paper, I will argue that, or this paper argues that, this paper will argue that. So after you do your introduction, then we get to claim 1. So I've blown it up made it larger in the gray box, so claim 1. This is your conclusion, of course. So as you may remember from when we did the logical arguments, every argument that is logical has premises and a conclusion. So a simple common style is to have 3 premises. So these are the subclaims A, B, and C. And these 3 together go into the conclusion, which is claim 1. So when we did logical arguments, I showed you the premises, premise 1, premise 2, and I showed you the conclusion at the bottom. However, when we do Western academic writing for the paper, we're just going to flip that. So it'll just be upside down. So you're going to have your claim 1 is the conclusion, and you have your subclaim A. This is your one premise, it's a reason. Subclaim 2, it's a premise, a reason. Subclaim 3, a premise, a reason for your claim. So you know your claim. It's the conclusion. It should only have the information from subclaim A plus subclaim B plus subclaim C. It should not have any new information that is not in the premises. And then claim 2 is going to be exactly the same way. It's going to have premises. These are your reasons, your proofs, your evidence for your thesis statement. And your claim is the conclusion of these evidences. And then finally, claim 3. This is a normal basic paper structure where we have claim 1, claim 2, and claim 3. Similarly to the other 2, exactly the same. It's going to be your conclusion of the sub-premises A, B, and C. And as I said, the conclusion at the bottom is going to be, again, your thesis statement and the short summary of your argument, which is claim 1, claim 2, and claim 3, shortened into 1 to 3 sentences. And then the last part of the conclusion is the application of your thesis statement. This is the part where you can be creative, use your imagination, include your opinion. The application means, so what? I just read this paper. I understood your argument. Maybe you convinced me and now I agree with your thesis statement. But that's just a paper. In a sense, we could say it's theoretical. It's not in the real world. It's just an argument. But so what? It means, how should we apply what you showed me, what you proved, what you taught me? How should we apply that to the real world? So you have a thesis statement. So for example, if it's about teachers should use ICT, or for example, if it's about making a treaty to protect tuna. Okay, I read your argument. Now, what should I, the reader, do? Or what should other people do if they ever get a chance to hear about your thesis statement? What should be the result? What should be the change in the real world as a result of your paper? So this is an interesting part of the Western academic writing, because in some cultures, writing does not need to give any practical application to the real world. But Western academic writing should give some kind of, in the end, at the very end, it can be one paragraph or it can be more. But it should at least say, now I have made this argument, here's what you should do. Here's what these people should do. Here's what those people should do. Who should do what as a result of your argument being true? Remember that the conclusion is the short summary of your argument in past tense. It includes the thesis statement. So it will say something like, this paper has shown that. When we did our logical arguments lesson, you may remember this slide. We want to use true statements, and we want to make sure that the premises go into the conclusion with no extra information. We want to avoid illogical arguments where information in the conclusion is new. Make sure when you write your outline that only your subclaims go into your claim, and the claim does not include any information that was not in the subclaims. And then your thesis statement can only include the information from Claim 1, Claim 2, and Claim 3. It should not include any new information that you could not prove in your claims. So let's look at this example from the idea of a British humor. So when you're making your outline, it's at the beginning of the writing process. So maybe you don't know completely what you're going to research yet, but you have some idea. That's okay. So maybe for Claim 1, you have Claim 1, British food is actually bland, and you have your subclaims that you think are true. You're going to research them to check whether they're true or false, but for now you're just going to write them here. Subclaim A, wartime rationing could be a reason that British food is bland. Lack of spices before the British Empire could be a reason that British food is bland. Lack of interest in flavor by British people could be a reason that British food is bland. So these are the reasons to support Claim 1 that British food is actually bland. And then Claim 2, the style of British humor cannot be blamed on the weather. In order to prove that, we need some evidences. So subclaim A, different weather in England compared to Scotland, compared to Northern Ireland. They're close in geography, but the weather might be different. But maybe the humor is the same throughout the British Islands, so that could be a reason that the humor is not the result of weather. Subclaim B, countries with similar weather to London, but the cultures there may have a different sense of humor. If that's true, then it would be a reason that British humor is not a result of weather. Maybe subclaim 3, maybe you're not sure yet, you need another reason, but you haven't thought about it yet. That's okay. Then you can just put some question marks for now. Yeah, I need to find another reason. When I start to do the research, maybe I'll find another good reason why British humor is not related to weather. For now, I know I need a subclaim 3, but I don't have it yet. That's okay. At least I have 2 things to research, subclaim A and B, and while I'm researching them, maybe I'll find a 3rd reason that I can use. Claim 3. Several experts on British culture have connected certain jokes to the British palate. So in order to give proof for this claim, I need some experts. So maybe I don't yet know who they are, but I know they probably exist. So I have an idea who I need to look for. So subclaim A, for expert 1, I'm going to use a famous British historian. That would be someone who would be an expert on British culture. And for subclaim B, I'll use an expert who is a famous British anthropologist. That person would also be an expert on British culture. And subclaim C, for expert number 3, maybe instead of a particular person, I'll use a particular source, which would be a famous novel from British literature. So even though I don't know who they are yet, I haven't decided, but I know what I need to look for. I need to find a historian, I need to find an anthropologist, I need to find a famous novel. If I do that, then I will have my subclaims for my claim 3, which is several experts on British culture have connected jokes to the British palate. So there's no information in claim 3 that's not in the subclaims. There's no information in claim 2 that's not in the subclaims. And there's no information in claim 1 that is not in the subclaims. The subclaims of each are the reasons to prove the claim. The claim is the conclusion. And then the thesis statement is claim 1 plus claim 2 plus claim 3 with no extra information. That's how we make the outline of a Western academic writing. Just to review, claim 1 and claim 2 and claim 3 are your answer to weaknesses, to opposition, to opposite opinions, to objections. It's your answer, your rebuttal, your way to solve the reader's potential objection to your thesis statement. You might have other things you would want to write about, regarding your thesis statement, your theme, your topic, but if it is not these claims that answer the weaknesses, then it's not on topic for your paper. That would be off topic. Don't write anything that does not fall into this. So you have your 3 answers to the weaknesses, and you have your reasons for those 3 answers. That makes your thesis statement, and that's the outline. You don't need to write any other kind of information. So let's just look in a little more detail at the example. So we have the introduction that has the thesis statement, the first, second, third, which are your claims. And you can see here the claims 1, 2, and 3. This is a very simple way to write it. After that, we'll go claim by claim. So start with claim 1. We need to make the subclaims. Primacy, subclaim A, rationing. Primacy, subclaim B, lack of spices. And primacy, C, lack of interest in flavor. So it doesn't have to be full sentences. It just has to be your answer to the question. Is British food actually bland? You give your reasons why you think it is actually bland, and then you're going to research them later. So how does the outline relate to the writing process? First, we write this outline before we begin the research. Then the outline can guide our research so that you're looking for, focusing on the information in your research that will be useful for proving your thesis statement. So whether you're using websites or books, academic journal articles, magazines, courses that you're taking in university, whatever the sources are that you're using, if you have an outline, you know what to pay attention for, what to listen for, what to look for when you skim in the book, what to read for, where in the book to look based on the index at the back of the book, or the chapter titles. Those will help you to know you don't need to read the whole book, you need to find the parts of the book that relate to your thesis statement and read those parts. So, this helps you to avoid wasting time. Reading parts of a whole book, a whole chapter, a whole article, maybe only one page or a few of the pages are related to your thesis statement. If you have your outline, then you can always remember and remind yourself which parts you need to read, which data, which information you need to find to prove your thesis statement. At this point, you want to discover whether or not you can make your arguments. It's okay if you don't know yet if some of it is correct or not correct. You'll find out when you do the research, but the outline will help you to make sure you're only researching the important questions that you need to be able to answer. In your research materials, you'll probably find many interesting things, facts about your general topic. It can be easy to get sidetracked, to go off the main path. You have a path from your thesis statement to outline to your final version of your paper, and you don't want to veer off of that path. But it's easy while you're researching, oh, this book is so interesting, you can start to read things that are not part of your thesis statement or proof for your argument. So if you continue to remind yourself, look at your outline again. At each step, oh yeah, I need to look for that. Oh yes, I need to look for that. If you know what you need to look for, then you can help yourself to avoid spending too much time reading things that are not useful for your argument. And most of all, you will be able to write only sentences that are useful for your argument and avoid writing lots of words that you have to throw away, that you have to delete and remove from your paper. At this time, when you're researching, you're testing, you're checking whether the argument for your thesis statement will work or not, whether your premises are true or false. As you learn more, you may need to change your outline. That's perfectly fine. If you find out that one of your premises was wrong, you can change to a different premise. The outline will help you to know which part to change and which parts you don't need to change. Sometimes you might need to abandon your argument if the key claims fail. So maybe you'll find in your argument, claim 1 and claim 3, I found the evidence, but claim 2, I didn't find any evidence for that one. So that's okay, you can get rid of it and choose a different claim to match the evidence that you found. After you research, or when you're almost finished with the research, then you think about whether you need to revise your thesis statement based on the evidence that you found according to your outline. So it might be a large change or it might be a small change. And then after you write your paper, then you'll check the thesis statement one more time to make sure that your contents, your claims, and your subclaims, your premises and conclusions all go into the thesis statement, and the thesis statement has no new information that was not in the claims or the subclaims. Each claim should not have any information that was not in the subclaims. If you promised some information, but you didn't have time or you couldn't find that evidence, you couldn't find the facts in your data, then you may need to make a change to your outline. You may need to make a change to your thesis statement, and that's fine. That's normal. But it's most important that your thesis statement is strong and your outline shows how you will clearly argue, how you will clearly give the evidence for your thesis statement. And it should not include any other kind of information, side information, background information. Nothing else is necessary, just the argument, the reasons that your thesis statement are correct. You don't need any other kind of information in your academic writing paper. This is the Western style, the structure. So please make sure that you don't put in extra information that will confuse or distract or annoy your reader. Just stick to the structure and you'll be able to get a good grade or get good results in whatever means that you have, whatever intent you have for this paper. Thank you very much and see you next time.